Sometimes a developer decides that a level in their game isn't working and hides it away in the game data with the intention that no players were ever going to find it. But of course, we found that. Though sometimes I think they maybe could have done a little better job of hiding them. Really? Today we're diving into the top 10 strangest, most perplexing areas in games that players got into that were never intended to be found. Skyrim. On the PC version of Skyrim, if the player were to open up the console and type player.move to 39F1E, you'll be transported to this creepy cross-shaped room way out in the bounds with a huge pile of bodies in the middle of the room? What the hell is this? Fortunately, there's a pretty simple explanation. This map is actually referred to as Dead Body Cleanup Cell, which if that isn't already self-explanatory, it's a room used to teleport and house dead bodies out of the main map so that the game doesn't overload on memory if you're going around filling up the world with too many dead bodies. But here's the strange thing. If you notice, Bethesda left 2 coffins sitting here in the middle of the room, which I'm pretty sure has nothing to do with the process of removing dead bodies from the main map. I theorize these coffins are either here as an indicator as what this room is supposed to be, or as a way to solidify the fear in any gamers that have managed to trap themselves in here. Speaking of which, can we get the hell out of here now? Spyro, Year of the Dragon. In Spyro 3 Year of the Dragon, clever players found on this segment of Dino Mines if the player floated on the surface of this body of water while looking at Zoe, and then dived underneath the water, she'll give you a sudden zap. Okay, what did that do? Well, in that moment, if you were to make Spyro meet his sudden end... Sorry, Spyro. The player will respawn and find out they've activated a swim in the air glitch. Using this glitch, the player can fly well out of bounds. And beyond the playable area, you can find a hidden portal floating out of the bounds of the level. It transports you into this arena with, nothing in it. But it's speculated that it was likely for a cut boss fight. It'd be interesting to see if this area somehow made it into the remastered version coming out next month. That is, if it doesn't get delayed again. And while we're on the subject of Spyro, players found a rather interesting test level deep in the files of Spyro: A Hero's Tale. Unfortunately, there was no good footage of this anywhere, so I took a good few hours to get this hack working myself. Massive thanks to Ghosty and Agent Evil for their assistance. Finally, we're in. Do you recognize this place? It's actually the outdoor Hogwarts map from the video game adaptation Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, which the same developers worked on. Though rare, it always makes for an interesting contrast when you can find the map from one game inside of another, such as this map called Moto X hidden deep in the files of Tony Hawk Pro Skater 4, which I assume is a map from MTX Motor Tracks, being that the original title was Travis Pastrana's Pro Moto X, Moto X being the same name as the level. The original name of MTX Motor Tracks is confirmed in the Activision O2 booklet included in copies of Pro Skater 4. Trepasser. Trepasser is the interesting 1998 first-person shooter based off the 1997 Jurassic Park film The Lost World, which failed critically and commercially for being too ahead of its time to really effectively realize its ambitious gameplay concepts. Something we still certainly deal with to this day. Gabe Newell even said that when he was creating the still influential to this day physics engine of Half-Life 2, he only had Trepasser to go off of. That had to be rough. Interestingly, if the player were to get on this wall of this corner of the 4th level InGen Tower, you'll suddenly drop through this gap in the wall's collision, and be teleported into this test level, which contains a number of odd things to mess around with, including yet another odd head that doesn't appear anywhere else in any of the game. There's also this domino effect way up on the edge of the map. Okay, I think I'm starting to see where Gabe Newell got his inspiration for that physics engine.
Didn't think this would be complete without a giant Pachinko machine.
But even more interesting, if you were to fall out of the bounds of the edge of the level, and venture into the abyss long enough, an area will appear that contains
guns. Lots of guns.
It truly appears to have... Oh! Here comes a raptor. Get to the gun!
5, 1.
Oh. Whew.
feels full.
Burnout Paradise. Thanks to commenter Fen Beckus for sharing this one with me from the last video that I did on this subject. Players found an interesting area in this game with the use of a mod. At least, I would assume so. I'm pretty sure flying was not a normal feature in this game. Players found an untextured city floating beyond the bounds of the game world, which was actually completely traversable. Although none of this geometry was later reused, the area itself was later used for a DLC location called Big Surf Island, which was an area players had to pay for access for once it was added in. However, once again, hackers managed to hack themselves inside this area without having to pay a dime, only this time to be treated with a rather interesting version of the level. Honestly, I think I like this version better. World of Warcraft. So I actually got several comments from the previous video asking me to cover this area, and I can totally see why. In Karazhan at the Cemetery of Morgan's plot lies an inaccessible crypt that has confused World of Warcraft players for years. If you manage to get inside, you'll notice that this location seems nearly completely finished. As you step through the crypt, you'll notice that the whole thing is eerily littered with bones at your every turn. There's a bunch of lonely empty rooms with these loud door creaks when you open them. But the creepiest part of this area is this pool of water that when you enter it gives you the prompt the upside down sinners. And when you go beneath the surface, you'll find this. What? I think I can see why we weren't supposed to find this. Not sure there's a much weirder sight than this in the whole game. Besides this hole in the same tomb that has an enormous pile of skeletal remains at the bottom of it. What? Halo 2. So Halo 2 in my opinion is one of the best games ever made, but what was with that last level? I'm not trying to spoil much here, but Halo 1 ended with an extremely memorable sequence of racing your Warthog to a Pelican before the reactor exploded. And Halo 3 upped the ante and featured a similar race against the clock before a nuclear blast exploded the planet. But Halo 2's final sequence with Master Chief simply ends in this room featuring normal gameplay no different than any other sequence in the whole game. Well, I think you know what's coming. Players uncovered this map deep in the game data and figured out it's actually for the original ending sequence, where the player would have once again raced against the clock with a Warthog through this tubular ship, ending with an epic jump at the end where Master Chief would have rammed his Warthog into the Covenant ship, brandishing a legendary ending across every player's mind for the rest of eternity. Instead, it ended with Master Chief hopping aboard the ship instead. Really? Landstalker. In 1992, Landstalker was a Japanese-only action-adventure that gained hype overseas for being considered the only game that actually rivaled Legend of Zelda. Fortunately for international players, the game released worldwide in 1993, but an interesting change was made in the process. In the Japanese version of the game, you were originally able to enter this room without issue, but in the international release, this maid stops you from going in. But of course, since you're watching this video, you already know that doesn't stop us from modding the game and getting inside anyway. Inside is this. The game's antagonist Kayla full on enticing you to a bubble bath. Even though it's fairly clear why this scene was censored for international audiences, the whole thing is fully translated as if they actually considered including it and changed their minds at the last minute. The game even gives you the option to join her in the bath. If you choose yes though, Friday, your wood nymph friend, knocks your ass out and warps you out of the room. Seemingly out of a jealous rage since she randomly added the line "she looks older than me" right before she did so. And if you choose no, you get your ass knocked out again. Great, thanks. Final Fantasy VII. As if Final Fantasy VII didn't already have enough hidden weird content. Using a GameShark device, you can enter a code at the start of the game to get yourself inside of the game's debug room. Debug rooms in Japanese RPGs often look like this, with lots of characters standing around with dialogue prompts allowing you to teleport into various locations in the game, which is an easy way for developers to get around through the game to test various elements. Final Fantasy VII's debug room is unique in that it's unnecessarily complex, with lots of branching debug rooms to debug rooms. And one of these branching debug rooms is particularly odd. On the very first debug screen, you simply have to go south all the way to the top of this red arrow, and then dart to the southeast direction. You'll suddenly be teleported to a room with a giant Ares. Choosing for those with a little time allows you to actually explore the room. Weirdly enough, the actual floor in front of Ares has its own dialogue.
Huh? You're not thinking of stepping on me, are you? I may be a floor, but that don't give you the right.
And if you do step on the floor, you hear this. If you can believe, this is actually not the strangest thing in this room. If you go up to Ares, you receive a list of locations to choose to teleport to in the game. An interesting example lies at the bottom of the list. To Hades? You likely know Hades as the Greek god, but it's also the Greek word for the underworld itself, so this moment is likely a mistranslation of the word hell. And if you click the prompt, Ares shakes her head at you and reveals the truth. Silly, didn't anyone tell you? This is Hades. Which, given the mistranslation, what she actually means is, silly, didn't anyone tell you? This is hell. Okay, I'm officially weirded out. Shrek, extra large. I'm a little ashamed of how long I had to play this game in order to show you this. Even though this game pretty much is the ultimate Shrek meme. That said, when you do finally finish this game, you unlock a cheat menu which includes a number of cheats you more expect in a Tony Hawk game than a Shrek game. But then again, Shrek was in Tony Hawk Underground too. That said, with the use of moon gravity, you can explore and break out of the boundaries of Shrek Extra Large, which probably to no one's surprise at all was not designed with moon gravity in mind. With moon gravity, if you manage to get out of the bounds of a level and then manage to fall under the map, the game loads you into an interesting failsafe area. Inexplicably, you'll wind up in this small enclosed area, which is actually an extremely accurate rendering of the inside of a GameCube. What? At this point, the game completely turns off cheats and forces you to restart the console to get out of it. Honestly, I'm at a loss for words. It's just, why? Well, one thing's for sure, they certainly spent a lot more time building this room than anything else in the game. Seriously, this room looks better than anything else in the entire game. Not even exaggerating. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more content like this, please subscribe. And if you know of any other hidden content in the game that we weren't supposed to see, let me know in the comments below or come join the Discord. Shout out to Dr. Love, Jason, Kevin, Pestilent Sleeper, Emery, and Towerizer for their Patreon support. Also, if you're looking for another channel that you'll probably enjoy, check out the Easter Egg Hunter, good friend, awesome guy. Stay tuned.